you, thank you. I was almost forgetting.
So
I tried to send you reminders yesterday and this morning, and the quick mail told me that it would send shortly, but it never did, because I actually also copied my personal email in it. So you couldn't have gotten any mail or module message from me. But on your e-learn platform, I updated what we'll be discussing today. So I guess you saw that.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw
Then last
that.
week as well, the same thing happened, and on Sunday that was when the mail delivered. So for those who received mail and message, must have gotten the notice for Friday class on Sunday. So I think the network is really affecting things, and I'm not able to help. Even the technical person, they are not able to help me. They said it's the
Can you
network.
anybody? There is too much of noise in the class.
So people
Yes, it's Abdullah Ahmed.
Yes, a lot of people are making noise.
okay, so I'm muting everyone. I'm muting everyone right away so that we can have some sane discussion. Mute all. Okay. Please, now you tell me in the chat box if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, you can hear me. Okay, so I'm going to begin to share my screen now. I'm sharing my screen. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Just tell me yes in the chat if you can see the screen. Then I'm going to slideshow. All right, thank you. So just as you know, it's third week of class. Okay, so You're already aware of where we are in the course. We're looking at Unit 1 of Module 2. And in the messages, I mean, on your e-learn platform, you already know that this is what we're discussing based on the discussion we had last week. So I would like you, before we jump into the class proper, to share with me in the chat box what you've read about this particular topic, history of science in the Middle Ages. So I'm in the chat box looking. What have you read about history of science in the Middle Ages? That's the first unit of Module 2. Yes, Kingsley. Yes. Yes, Dada Queen. Yes. Exactly. Peter Echuji. I just read your comments. Yes, you're correct. So I want more responses. What did you read? History of science, especially in the Middle Ages. What's it saying? Yes, Okunuga Abiba. You read about science in the Dark Age. What does it say? What's science in Dark Age? And Renaissance, yes. Korediola Iwola. So give me content beyond just telling me points. If you can't hear me, it might be due to your network. Others can hear clearly. Toggle with your network a bit. About revival, what else? Yes, two faces. Renaissance means revival, that's true. You are right. Okay, so what's the contribution of the Arabs? Umar Abdullahi. Can you share what the contribution is? Esu Pascal. Yes, dominated by Christian theology, that's true. Exactly. Sunday Helen Daniel, yes. The Arabs took advantage of the Dark Age, that's correct. Okay, that's Dada point. All right. At least those who have contributed have said some meaningful things. Okay. So thank you all. So science in the Middle Ages. Okay, so these were just a few questions that I had put down for you, but good students that you all are, you've answered them. Science in the Middle Ages of Europe. What is another name? You've already answered it. Medieval period. How many phases? Several of you mentioned it. The Dark Age and the Renaissance. So Godwin read about method of acquiring, observation and understanding. All right. Thank you all. You may pause the chat now. So we move on. So you all are familiar with what we're discussing today, and I'm just going to guide you through what the unit is saying. So we're treating just unit 1 today of module 2 because it's very dense. We have lots of information there. And just as you know, I can't take them all in class. You all have contributed some. So after this class, you should still go back to your materials and read more on it. So when we talk about science in the Middle Ages, that's Middle Ages of Europe. Just as you know, it's between 476 and 1400. You should be able to hear me now. Network is poor. Can you hear me? Tell me in the chat. All right, thank you. You can hear me. So I'll continue. I'll go to slideshow. So we're talking science in the Middle Ages, and we're talking about the two phases that characterize the Middle Ages. That's the Dark Age and the Renaissance. And you can see the periods of the year in front of it in the slides. The Dark Age, we had it between 450 to 800 AD, Annus Domini, and the Renaissance between 9th to 15th century BC. Please take notes of the dates in one of your tutor marked assignments. I think it's going to be asked. You're going to be asked, maybe. Okay, so take notes of the dates. So when we talk about science in the science in the Dark Age, that's an aspect of medieval period, which is also known as the Middle Ages. What characterizes science in the Dark Age? Okay, so science in the Dark Age is usually was the first part of the Middle Ages in Europe. And there are a number of reasons why it's referred to as the Dark Age. First, because of the barbarian invasions, the constant invasions by the barbarians. Who are the barbarians? The tribes who were outside the Roman Empire. They were the ones referred to as the barbarians. And if you've heard the saying, barbarians talk in thousands, that's where the saying is gotten from. So one of the reasons why the Dark Age is so called is because it was a period where there was a constant invasion by the barbarian tribes, civilization, which had flourished under the rule of the Roman Empire before it came to a standstill. That's one. Also, there was a development in learning, architecture, science, and arts. It slowed down or stopped altogether. Such development stopped. So I want to go back to the invasion. You know, now in Nigeria especially, we've been having this constant insecurity, let's say invasion by Fulani herdsmen, kidnappings and the like. So we can actually liken the period in our history as a nation, Nigeria, as maybe something similar to the invasion that the barbarians were doing in the Dark Ages. So there was a constant invasion. That's one reason. The other one was that there was the development in learning and architecture and in human knowledge generally at that time. it either slowed down or it stopped altogether. So life became unsafe, similar to how our lives are generally unsafe in Nigeria due to various forms of insecurities. So life at the time was very unsafe because of the constant wars among the petty kingdoms within the empire. So if you're asked why is it called the Dark Age or the Dark Ages, these were the reasons, 3 major reasons why it was called the Dark Age. Also in the Middle Ages, there was only one church, as I said earlier, the Roman Catholic in Western Europe. And it was a symbol of authority, symbol of unity, such that United Christian of the world was called Christendom. So that's another idea that characterized the Middle Ages specifically, not Dark Age now. We have the dominance of a particular church. So all the fragmentation of churches of denominations that we have in 21st century wasn't there. It was just one Christian unity under the umbrella of the Roman Catholic Church in Western Europe. So during this Dark Age, the fathers of the church, they were not very much interested in knowledge of nature for its own sake. And we're going to see why that is so, because one of the reasons is because there was a great dominance of Christian theology at the time, which opposed the knowledge of nature. So that's why those called fathers of the church, the patriarchs, they showed little interest in knowledge of nature for its own sake. Their belief was that when we hold discussion on the nature and position of the earth, it would not help them in their hope of life to come. They believe that holding discussion on the nature and position of the earth, it doesn't help in the afterlife, in the hope after death, that it doesn't help. So based on the dictum of Aristotle, which says everything that moves is moved by something else, one of the church fathers at the time during the Middle Age, Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas, he affirmed the existence of God since God is an unmoved mover. Okay, let me just give you a brief background to this. Aristotle was an ancient philosopher, and Aquinas was a medieval philosopher, which is the period in history we are looking at science during that period. So Aquinas is a philosopher in the Middle Ages or in the medieval period, whose theology is Aristotelian in outlook. That is, his theology is patterned out after the philosophy of Aristotle. And so given that Aristotle had this dictum, everything that moves is moved by something else, Aquinas, being one of the church fathers during the Middle Age, which is the period in history we're discussing, he affirmed the existence of God since God is an unmoved mover. Now, so the cosmology, Aristotle's cosmology, was the dominant basis in the Dark Ages. Remember, Aristotle lived in the ancient period. We're looking at the Middle Age. But his influence, Aristotle's influence, did not end in the ancient period. So that's why his cosmology was the dominant science in the Dark Ages. Dark Age, which is one of the phases found in the Middle Ages. So Aristotle believed that heavenly bodies influenced human destinies. So despite that, we have what is called Dark Age, and the various reasons which make us refer to it as Dark Age. There are advances in science at this point. So to these advances, we now turn. The first advances or advancement was in the invention of the rigid horse collar and the iron horseshoe. Don't laugh. I know it's laughable if you use the eye of a 21st century person to imagine that horse collar and horseshoes were inventions at the time. Okay, but when you understand the period in history we're talking about, it meant a lot to them because that's implied a better means of, or a faster means of transportation. They were using horses at the time as their means of transportation. So they were able to invent the horse collar and the horseshoe, which enabled the horses to be able to travel faster. So while the horse collar helped shift the weight of a load to a horse's shoulder, what the horseshoe does was to protect a horse's hoof from damage, and so enable the animal to travel further and faster than it could without them. So without these two inventions highlighted in yellow, the horses were not able to move as fast as they could after they had made the invention. I'll show you the picture shortly so you understand what I'm saying perfectly. So these were important inventions at the time, since the use of horses were their means of land transportation. So all the transportation, we have lots of means of transportation now. We have by rail, we have by air, we have by road, we have by sea, we have by land. But at the time, they had just about land transportation. So it meant a whole lot. And of course, there were no cars. So what you have on the screen, you have this is the rigid horse collar, which helped them to shift the weight of the burden on the horse. And the iron horse collar on a horse. This is the collar worn to the horse, on the horse. And this is the horseshoe bar. Can you see? This is the horseshoe. So these were inventions during the Dark Age. So also one thing to take note is that in the Dark Age, there were monks in monasteries who ensured that some amount of learning was kept alive. Remember, we had said one of the features of the Dark Age was that there were no development in learning. But with the presence of these monks in monasteries, these monks, they ensured that some amount of learning was kept alive. And these monks also translated ancient knowledge and works of the Egyptians, Babylonians, and Greeks into Latin. Are we together? Are we together? I want to check. Are we together? Okay, yes, thank you. I just want to be sure. So I'll go back to slideshow. So they also kept alive some knowledge of the arts of agriculture, since they were practical farmers, that's the monks. So aside trying to keep some form of learning alive, they also tried to keep going agriculture. So while Europe was in the Dark Ages, Islamic learning started to flourish in the East. So note that somebody had said during the question and answer that the Arabs, they took advantage of the Dark Age, which was not untrue. So we're going to see that shortly. So they criticize and try to make their own innovations. That's the Islamic scholars. And so the major interest of the Arabs at the time during the Dark Age that Europe experienced, it was basically in astronomy and astrology. The Arabs, they were majorly interested in astronomy and astrology. And they constructed great astronomical observatories, which they used in checking Ptolemaic predictions. Does anybody remember Ptolemy? Was it in this class we talked about Copernican revolution and Claudius Ptolemy? Somebody tell me in the chat. Was it in this class? Have we talked about Ptolemy, Claudius Ptolemy? Claudius Ptolemy. Anybody? Copernican revolution. No, all right, okay. No, all right, it's okay. So I'm just going to give you a brief background on it. Okay, maybe not, because we're still going to get to it sometimes next week. But just note that the Arabs, they got critical trying to check Ptolemaic predictions. Note it, Ptolemaic is from the guy called Claudius Ptolemy. We'll see it next week when we're looking at the geocentric and the geocentric and the heliocentric conception of the earth. So they made many improvements in medicine. That's the Arabs, they did during this period when Europe was experiencing the Dark Age. So they also developed the primitive chemistry of the Greeks that is called alchemy. So this form of chemistry was developed by the Arabs at the time when Europe was experiencing the Dark Age. Somebody is fiddling with the whiteboard. I think you should just listen. So raises, you can see it's on the screen. He lived between 865 and 925. He was the greatest of the Arabic alchemists. So you should note it, the greatest of the Arabic alchemists, his name is Rhazes, and his works were based on experience and experiment. And the most eminent of them all, that's Muslim physicist, was Ibn al-Hakma, whose main work was in optics, and he showed a great advancement in experimental method. So these Islamic thinkers, they were very much interested in numbers. And being interested in numbers, it made them to create algebra and the study of algebraic functions. They also borrowed the idea of zero from the Hindu mathematicians and invented the Arabic numerals, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are information I think you should take note of. What were the Islamic thinkers fascinated with? Numbers, and it made them to create algebra and algebraic functions. And they borrowed zero from the Hindu and invented the Arabic numerals. That's the Arabs specifically. So the second main phase of the Middle Age is the Renaissance. You know, there are two main phases, the Dark Age and the Renaissance. So we've looked at the Dark Age and why it's called the Dark Age, the signs that characterize it, the inventions made during the Dark Age, and major scholars, especially Arabic or Islamic scholars in the Dark Age. So we're moving on to the second phase now, which is the Renaissance period, signs in the Renaissance period. So it's the second half of the Middle Ages in Western Europe. That's not news, you know it already. And it started from the 9th to 15th century. You should take note of the period the period that's the Renaissance period span. And so during this period, humans, they were very dissatisfied with the way of life in which there was little to no progress, or it was very slow. And they wanted changes in ideas, in beliefs, and the ways of thought. So there was a breakaway from the ancient way of thought, which they recognized as being very good. So see how the Renaissance period began. People became dissatisfied. So imagine the kind of state we are in Nigeria with, which is characterized by a lot of insecurity, loss of lives, economic hardship, and the like. So imagine that a point came where we became dissatisfied, maybe through this electoral process that is ongoing, and people begin to ask questions, and you want to break away from all the hardships that have characterized their life. So imagine that that's what Renaissance meant for the people at the time. So they were breaking away from old way of life, and they want changes in ideas, in beliefs, and in the way they think. So the spirit of questioning old beliefs and forming new opinions generally became, who is doing this? Somebody is fiddling with the whiteboard. I don't know why, but I think you should just concentrate on listening because you're distracting this class. So during the Renaissance, it's brought about the spirit of questioning old beliefs, old way of life, and forming new opinions. And this generally came to be described as the Renaissance. And so that's why it's referred to as rebirth or revival of learning. So the revival started in Italy, and it was kickstarted by three main scholars, whom we'll see now. Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. These three men started what we are learning as Renaissance in Italy. Renaissance is referred to as the period of revival, of renewal, rebirth, and especially revival of learning. You should take note of it. And so these artists try to show how superior the learning, arts, and culture of the ancient Greeks were. And this led to a revival of interest in the Greek language. I think I should be faster. So in the field of science, there were two very influential theologians and philosophers. That's Alba the Great, if you've heard him in history, and Thomas Aquinas is featuring again. So Alba the Great was a Bavarian Dominican priest, and Aquinas an Italian monk. Remember we said in the medieval period, it's a period of the church fathers, patriarchal fathers, patrilineal fathers. They both taught this. So these two people that were very influential theologians during this Renaissance period, they both taught at the University of Paris. So they were the first to accept the idea of distinction between knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge. Remember in the Dark Age, we said the church fathers, they were not interested in the knowledge of nature for its own sake. That was the Dark Age. But in the Renaissance period now, these two people, they were the first to make it, to try to tell us that there's a difference between knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge. But they also pointed out that God was the author of both. So one thing one cannot take away from the medieval period was the focus on God, was the focus on Christianity and Islam specifically. But the church also dominated, as the Catholic Church. There was nothing like Anglican and the likes, which the Protestant and the likes at the time. So despite that, these two people highlighted in green on your slide, they were the first to make the distinction between knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge. They still were very much strong on the idea that both forms of knowledge have God as the author. So the rationalistic approach, which separates large segments of human knowledge from theology, prepared the way for a relatively independent development of science. Okay, so some of the scientists, some scientists of this period with experimental and practical bent of mind include, you also have them in your course material, Robert Grosseteste, who was an English philosopher of science and determined the main direction, and he had knowledge of the workings of mirrors. So when you think about mirror and senses, you should think about this guy highlighted in green, Robert Grosseteste. So another scientist of this period with experimental and practical bent of mind is Roger Bacon, who lived between the periods on your screen, 1214 and 1294 Annus Domini. Francis Cameron, first man in Europe during the Renaissance that approached scientific spirit in the great Arabians who preceded him. So the reason he was able to do that was because he had a clear understanding that experimental methods alone give certainty in science. So another person is Leonardo da Vinci, which I think some of you should be familiar with. An Italian, apparently from his name, and we can call him the incarnation of the true spirit of scientific thought of the Renaissance. Was a painter, sculptor, engineer, architect, physicist, biologist, and philosopher. So to him, observation of nature and experimenting were the only true methods of science. He also believed that knowledge of the ancient writers could be useful as a starting point, but could never be conclusive. And so you'll find that maths, arithmetic, geometry, they gave knowledge that was certain within their domain, and therefore had something to do with reasoning. But true science begins with observation in order to obtain certainty of knowledge. You understand? 2 weeks back, we had talked about the scientific method and the various processes. And so you're seeing a corroboration of it in Leonardo da Vinci with the idea that true science or valid or genuine science, it begins with observation, which we discussed, passive and active observation, if you remember. And so he said true science begins with observation for us to be able to have certainty of knowledge. And that's the quotation he made on the screen. Those sciences which do not begin with experiment, the mother of all certainties, and which do not end with one clear experiment, are vain and full of errors. You see now, 2 weeks ago when we were discussing scientific method, we talked about hypothesis being guess, but you don't end with hypothesis, you take it to experimentation before you arrive at formulation of conclusion and all that. Leonardo da Vinci, through this quotes on the third bullet on the slide, corroborates that view. And so that brings us to the end of the class. Summary of what we've done so far. Okay, so it's slide 20. What we've done so far. First, we have discussed unit 1, just unit 1 of module 2, that's science in the Middle Ages, history of science in the Middle Ages. Then science in the Middle Ages of Europe. Then science in Dark Age, advances in Dark Age. In the Renaissance period, and some scientists also listed. Okay. So it's time for questions, for comments. We have about 20 minutes to do that. And so I'll stop sharing and you raise your electronic hands. I call you one after the other. You make your comments or questions brief so that we can take as many comments as possible. I stop sharing, I stop sharing, I stop sharing. I stop sharing. Okay. So I'm going to, you raise your electronic hands and I ask you to unmute, you speak briefly, and we take it off from there. So Abdul Hamed Shehu Tijan, unmute yourself. Where is it? Abdul Hamed Sheikh Tijan. Is he here? Hello? I can't hear you. You are talking, but I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I don't know why. What's up? Can we try somebody else? You are talking, but I can't hear you. If you chat me, I will respond. Sorry about that. I hope it's not from my end. Lucy, unmute yourself. Lucy, unmute yourself.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for the lecture, ma'am. But
Yeah.
actually, speaking on behalf of people, speaking on behalf of people, we can't really see your screen, like the image you were showing. We can't see the screen. We can't
Speak for yourself.
yeah, ma'am.
Speak for yourself.
Yes, like I can't see the screen, like the explanation you were giving. I can't see the screen and all that. So that's what I just want to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you tell me? Okay. Please mute yourself. Was it the case that you couldn't see the screen? Please tell me in the chat box if you were able to see the screen. Okay. Okay, but you heard, right? You couldn't see, I don't know, maybe it was the network. Okay, but you heard and you read ahead just as you were asked to. So based on what you heard and what you've read and what you contributed at the beginning of the class, what you read, what you contributed at the beginning of the class, and what you heard, what question do you have, if at all? So I'm calling Anne Onu. Anne Onu, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, ma. Ma, please, I want to know what you said about the Harvard degree and the unison. You said that the unison is the revival of learning. In which aspect, ma? Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard you.
Okay, ma.
So,
thank you, ma.
I'm going to where's that choice? Can you see the screen?
No, ma. Okay, yes, ma, I can. Yes,
Can
ma.
everybody see the screen? Just tell me in the chat. Okay, now you can see.
Yes.
So what was being said basically, can you still see the screen?
Yes, ma.
Okay, so I just want to be sure of that. So Renaissance means rebirth, revival, having experienced slowness in progress during the dark age. That's what it means, simply put, without much story. The meaning of Renaissance is rebirth, revival, because they were breaking away from old way of thoughts and beliefs and moving to a different way. So what was said there, based on the question, is that there were two very influential theologians at this time, Albert the Great and Thomas Aquinas. Both of them were teachers at the University of Paris, and their major contribution was that they accepted a difference between knowledge of nature and knowledge of God and revealed knowledge. That's it, basically. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Anne, kindly mute yourself because there is noise emanating from your side. So that's what that is basically.
Okay, thank you.
That's fine. Okay. So, just as you know, the class is being recorded, and I'm going to share the link with you on the platform. So at your leisure, you could go back and watch. But you were able to hear the voice and you read your book, you would be able to learn. But you could just watch as well. Is that okay? Is that okay? So I'll call others. Okununga Abiba. Unmute yourself. Abiba Okununga. Unmute yourself.
Okay, good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yes, thank you for this lecture. It was very interesting. But please, ma, I have missed a lot because I was not able to understand the time that the lecture or the online facilitation normally takes place. So
Okay.
I missed the whole of module 1. Though I had started listening to your lecture, to your recorded lectures,
Okay.
and I would still like a bit of or a summarized explanation of what module 1. Though I've been reading I have a hard copy of the course. So, but I'll still, if it's not possible today, maybe some other time, I'll still want to have a general summarized discussion on module 1. That's
right.
number 1. Hold on, man. Then number 2, man. When I was going through my book, I saw an assignment file. It was talking about 50%, 12% of mark examination mark to give us the total examination score. Can you throw more light on the assignment file so that we understand exactly what it is?
Okay. So your first question, you missed classes. You are watching from the link, a generalized summary of module 1. Just as you said, it can be in this class. If we have some time after we've concluded the course, I will do a revision. You know, this facilitation is for 8 weeks. This is the 3rd week. But if we're able to finish with the course material and we have 1 or 2 weeks before exam, I'll consider doing a revision of all the modules. So that's that. Where did you get this assignment file from?
I saw it. It's on page, I think page 8. I have the hard copy of your GST 105.
Page 8 of the module, right?
Yes.
Page 8 of the course material.
Yes.
I might have to check that. I'm not.
The page is it's like an this Arabic sign. VIII. It says assignment file. All the details of the assignment file will submit to your tutor for marking will be found in this file. I don't know what it means.
I might need to check that. I'm not familiar with it, but I think all you need to do is to do your TMAs, submit on specifically what you're referring to in your course material. I might need to check that after this class, so I won't be able to comment on that portion of your material now. Is that all?
Yeah, that's all, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please mute yourself. I'm calling Nicholas. Unmute yourself. Nicholas.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Make your comments brief, please, so that we can get as many people as possible.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, I came late, miss on because of network.
Okay.
Please, I don't know, first of all, don't be angry, please, ma. For introduction, your name, ma. And I want to understand, you made mention of Jubra and Ojubra. I want to understand more on that.
You want to understand what?
What is Jubra and Ojubra?
Hmm?
You said something concerning Jubra and Ojubra.
Well, did you read before this class? No.
Actually, no. Yes.
Exactly. What we're saying is algebra. Arabs, they were instrumental to the invention of algebra, what we know as algebra in mathematics. So what we were saying in that portion of the class is that when Europe was experiencing the Dark Age, the Arabs took control of it, like opportunity of it, and they made their inventions in terms of number, Roman numerals, bringing about what we know as algebra, and they borrowed we have no Roman numerals, no Arab, is it Roman, Arabic numerals or something like that. They were the ones instrumental to that. And I'm sharing the screen so that you can see. And that they borrowed the idea of zero from the Indus. That was what we said there. But okay, so here is it. Islamic thinkers, they were fascinated with numbers. This made them to create algebra and the study of algebraic functions. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
please, can you tell us your name again? So that,
you said?
Your name. I'm sorry.
I'll rather type it, but this is your first class?
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly. So
thank you, ma'am.
That's it. That's my name in the chat. So we'll move on. Please mute yourself. So no more ants. So we'll call it Bernard Rachel. Unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, ma. This is my first time taking this class, ma.
Okay. Well,
yes. My question is that about the Dark Ages and the Renaissance period, ma. So can we say that the Renaissance period is better than the Dark Ages?
Well, it's not about one being better or one not being better. Maybe it's an improvement in the world somehow, but sometimes we need to experience that which seems not too good before it can birth a better world. So the essence of the discussion is not to identify which one is better, but as a way of explaining what the medieval or the Middle Ages entails. Like there is no how one would explain medieval period, especially the history of science at the time, without talking about those two phases. So it's one that birthed the other, because they experienced the Dark Age, they decided to have some improvements, which brought about the Renaissance. So I won't say one is better than the other. But without the Dark Age, they may not have thought of Renaissance. So I think they are equally good. So if you're looking at it with the eyes of a contemporary 21st century person, you might actually feel that one is better, but they're both good.
Yes,
At
ma'am.
least there's
Thank
an
you.
improvement here.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you too. Nicholas, please lower your hand. This nameless person, you should name yourself. It's only your matric number showing. I can't call you. Name your device so I know who I'm speaking with. So you may all unmute and we call it a class. The class is over. It's 4 o'clock. You can unmute yourself, right? So have a nice weekend.
Thank you, ma.
All right, thank you, ma.
Thank you, ma. Enjoy the
Thank you very
class.
much, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you so much. Ma. Thank you, ma.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma.
ma.
Bye.
Thank you.
Love you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're having our
Thank you,
next.
ma. Bye bye.
Yes, bye.
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 I love you like now.
Madam, see you next week.
Next week.
Best class ever.
Next week. Now we're going to talk rubbish. Class, maybe come on.
Chola. Always enjoy this class.
I want to take you.
Hey, God. Thank you.